big holiday release. Go and do a good job. It was daunting. It was at times overwhelming. Mostly it was thrilling. And I'm very proud of what has come out 11 months later. Excuse me. But it was a job that I look forward to getting up and going to every morning. And I think given the script is certainly the best of any of the Star Trek movies, in my opinion. My problem was to not to screw it up.
Have you ever wondered what happened to that guy from Star Trek: The Next Generation? The one with the deep voice, confidence, and, of course, the signature beard? We are talking about Commander William Riker, who was played by Jonathan Frakes. He was everywhere back in the 90s and was obviously loved by many. But suddenly, he disappeared after the show's golden years. No scandal, no drama. He was just gone. So, what really happened to Jonathan Frakes? Did he quit acting? Did Hollywood turn its back on him? Well, grab a seat, because we are diving into the real story behind the sudden disappearance of one of science fiction's most iconic stars. Where did Riker go? If you grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation, you probably remember Commander William Riker almost as much as you remember Captain Picard. He had a unique voice that made him stand out. Let's not forget his famous bears. He was smart, confident, and always leaning on one leg like he owned the room. Frakes brought warmth to that role and was one of those familiar faces that felt right on screen. He was practically Starfleet's definition of cool. But after The Next Generation ended, Jonathan Frakes, the guy who played Riker, quietly faded from the spotlight with no warning. Usually, there's always a reason behind the sudden disappearance of a famous actor from the spotlight. But for Frakes, there was no scandal, no social media rants, nor was there a major Hollywood headline. He just disappeared. He stopped showing up on talk shows, starring in big new series, or jumping into blockbuster films. And for fans who loved seeing him as Riker, it was quite surprising. Some people just assumed he got burned out and decided it was time to stay away from the spotlight. One minute, he was all over our screen, and the next, not so much. He didn't follow the path many of his castmates took. While actors like Patrick Stewart went on to star in other movies and other hit roles, Frakes seemed to step away. It wasn't like he stopped working altogether. He just stopped being seen in the way fans expected, in films. So, the question is, what happened? Well, the answer isn't something dramatic, as many might assume. There was no scandal or sudden fallout with the industry. It definitely wasn't one of those celebrity disappearances that make headlines. It was more subtle. Jonathan Frakes just shifted his focus. While the cameras turned to other stars, he decided to explore other sides of the industry, behind the scenes. And it turns out, he has been doing some pretty interesting work. But to really understand why he decided to shift his focus, you have to know a bit more about him. Not just as Riker in New Generation, but as Jonathan Frakes. So, who was he before the beard, before Starfleet, and before he ever sat in the captain's chair? What were his early goals? Has acting always been his dream? Who is Jonathan Frakes? Before Frakes became Commander Riker, leading missions and charming every alien species he came across, he was just a tall, curious, and creative boy from small-town Pennsylvania. He was born on August 19, 1952, in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, but his family moved to Bethlehem, a quiet town known more for steel. While the town was rich in history, it wasn't known for producing Hollywood stars. Frakes' father, Dr. James Frakes, was a respected literature professor and an accomplished book critic. His mother, Doris, worked to support the home and kept things grounded. They were not rich or famous, but they were close and deeply into education. Young Frakes didn't grow up dreaming of becoming a movie star. He wasn't that kid rehearsing Oscar speeches in front of a mirror, but he was a performer. He just didn't know it yet. One thing he loved was performing magic tricks. He enjoyed putting on little shows, and at one point he took up ventriloquism and was also a trombone player. By the time he got to high school, Frakes had a height and a presence that made him stand out. He played sports and music and was the kind of student teachers remembered. Not because he caused trouble, but because he was thoughtful, curious, and well-rounded. After he graduated from Liberty High School, he enrolled at Penn State University, choosing to major in theater arts, which might sound like a bold leap toward acting, but it wasn't. He was just interested in storytelling and performance. Frakes was fascinated by the craft, how actors communicated emotions, and how stories were built. It was never about being the center of attention. It was about the process. And that's the theme that would follow him throughout his life. He cared more about the work than the spotlight. After earning his undergraduate degree from Penn State, Frakes didn't stop there. He took a step further, enrolling in the Master of Fine Arts program at Harvard University. At Harvard's Loeb Drama Center, he studied classical acting, stage performance, and voice. The program was no walk in the park, but Frakes was determined to thrive. He wasn't rushing into television or movies. He was learning everything he could, getting better at his craft, and building a solid foundation. After he graduated from Harvard, like many actors, Frakes moved to New York City in search of something more. But he didn't dive straight into films or television. Instead, he took the traditional path: theater, off-Broadway, and a healthy dose of side hustles. He worked backstage, helped build sets, did voiceover work, and at one point, he dressed as Captain America at Marvel Live to entertain kids. He had bills to pay and was ready to do whatever it took. Frakes eventually landed small roles in soap operas like The Doctors and had guest appearances on shows like Fantasy Island and 8 is Enough. They were not breakout roles, but they were stepping stones. All along, he tried to remain focused. He was often described as warm, respectful, and easy to work with. The kind of actor who made everyone on set feel comfortable. It was during his time in New York that he met a woman who would become his wife. They had ups and downs but found a way to make it work. That stable personal life would become a key part of how Frakes made choices later on, especially when it came to what kind of work he took on and why. But even after all the work, nothing could have prepared him for what came next. Because in 1987, a call came in that would change his career and his life forever. Becoming Commander William Riker. By the mid-1980s, Jonathan Frakes had built a respectable career. He had done theater, soaps, and guest spots on popular television shows. He had the training and the experience, but he wasn't where he wanted to be yet. In the late 1980s, Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry was working on a new series that would revive the franchise for a new era. It wasn't a reboot, it was a continuation, set nearly a century after the original Kirk and Spock adventures. The show would be called The Next Generation and needed a fresh crew. Casting wasn't easy. The producers wanted serious actors and not just science fiction service. They were looking for chemistry, leadership, and someone who could carry the show week after week. And Frakes seemed to have all the qualities. But while it seemed like the role was created for him, he didn't get to become Rikes right away. In fact, he auditioned multiple times, 7 times to be exact. One thing about Frakes was that he wasn't trying to be a cool guy. He was the cool guy without even trying. That quiet confidence, mixed with his classical training, made him perfect for the role of Commander William Riker. Eventually, the casting team saw it, and so did Roddenberry. And just like that, Jonathan Frakes became #1. From the very beginning, Frakes brought something unique to the role of Riker. He wasn't just playing a character. He was building one. He was confident, thoughtful, and respectful, and was always ready to step back and let others shine. His dynamic with Patrick Stewart's Captain Picard quickly became a fan favorite. Their on-screen partnership felt real, more like mentor and peer than superior and subordinate. Then came the famous beard, a detail that began in the second season and soon became a trademark. Funny enough, the beard wasn't part of the plan. Frakes just came back from a break with facial hair, and the producers liked it, and so did fans. Riker's beard became a pop culture reference on its own. But beyond the aesthetic, Riker gave Frakes the chance to show real range. He could be funny, romantic, intense, and quietly emotional, all within a single episode. Still, while Frakes was shining in front of the camera, something unexpected started pulling his attention. Something fans didn't see coming. What could have shifted the focus of Jonathan Frakes from the role of the iconic Commander Riker? Passion for directing. Jonathan Frakes owned the character of Commander Riker, becoming one of the most familiar faces in science fiction television. But while fans loved seeing him as Riker, something else was quietly growing behind the scenes like a weed: his passion for directing. It started small and nearly never became a thing like he wanted. During the filming of Next Generation, Frakes took a growing interest in how things worked behind the scenes. The angles, lighting, and pacing were truly amazing to him. He was allowed to sit in on casting sessions, concept meetings, and production design. At a point, he wasn't just showing up, hitting his mark, and leaving. He was watching, asking questions, and learning the craft. By the third season of the show, producers noticed his passion for directing, and so Frakes was given the chance to direct an episode, The Offspring. That opportunity changed the course of his life. He wasn't just good at it, he was really good, and he knew it. The cast respected him, the crew liked working with him, and he had a knack for visual storytelling. In no time, he became one of the go-to directors in the Star Trek universe. Over the years, he directed episodes of The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Discovery, and Picard. You name it. In 1996, Frakes was handed the keys to a much bigger project: Star Trek: First Contact. This was huge for him. I mean, directing a full-length Star Trek came with huge pressure, not just from fans, but from the studio, the franchise, and the legacy of the series itself. But Frakes was fully committed to it, so he delivered. And guess what? First Contact wasn't just good. It's still considered by many fans as one of the best Star Trek films ever made. And just like that, he wasn't just Commander Riker anymore. He was a serious director in Hollywood. He followed it up with another Trek film in 1998, Star Trek: Insurrection. Even though it didn't quite hit the same height as First Contact, it showed Frakes could sit in the director's chair without issues. Guess what? Studios began taking notice. Frakes' career was on the rise as he hit more successes. He was confident these successes were going to make him a legend. So in 2004, Frakes took a non-Trek project with Thunderbird, a live adaptation of the classic British puppet series of the same name. Sadly, The film was a box office bomb, which he said single-handedly almost destroyed his directing career. The film was supposed to be a fun, family-friendly adventure that introduced the iconic characters to a new generation, but it flopped critically and financially. Some fans said it missed the spirit of the original series, and critics weren't kind at all. It was a major blow for him. My name was taken off the lists. I went from 60 to 0. It was a wake-up for me. I had been so positive and so blessed and so fortunate, he said. Frakes accepted his fate and quietly stepped back without a public meltdown or dramatic interviews. Hollywood can be tough and competitive. One misfire, and everything slows down fast. After Thunderbirds messed up, big studio offers stopped coming in, and for a while, it seemed Frakes had disappeared again. It felt like he had to begin his career from the beginning. But if you know Jonathan Frakes by now, you know that's not the end of his story. He didn't quit, he shifted again. Instead of chasing big-budget blockbusters, he returned to what he always loved, working with the people he respected, telling good stories, and staying connected to his Star Trek roots. He directed episodes of Leverage, Burn Notice, NCIS, Los Angeles, The Librarian, and more. They were not headline-grabbing projects, but they were reliable projects. And when Star Trek experienced a revival with Discovery, Lower Decks, and Picard, guess who came back? Jonathan Frakes. Not only did he direct several episodes of the newer show, but he also reprised his role as Riker, older, wiser, and just as cool. In Star Trek Picard, fans got a heartfelt reunion of Riker and Picard, which brought some real nostalgia and a reminder of how much Frakes still meant to the franchise. Over the next few years, Frakes also found a niche as narrator and host. Do you remember Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction? That was him, too, walking into the frame with mysterious tales and that signature eyebrow raise. Social media never forgot that. In fact, Frakes became a bit of a meme legend, with clips from the show going viral and being used as content over the years. Clips of Frakes asking totally random questions started showing up on TikTok and YouTube. People found it funny, especially because of how seriously he delivered even the most out-there lines. In an interview, Frank laughed about how the show became a meme and said he found it pretty entertaining that younger generations are discovering him this way, not through Star Trek, but through footage of him asking strangers if they've ever been to a Turkish prison. For Frakes, it was all good fun. He never took himself too seriously, and fans loved that about him. By the 2010s and beyond, it became clear that Frakes had transitioned into a behind-the-scenes legend, a mentor, especially to young directors working in science fiction. He was often asked to direct tricky episodes, especially ones with action sequences that needed a steady hand. Studios knew that if Frakes was on set, the job was getting done right. At this point in his career, it was more about his contribution than fame. He is happy to show up in an episode as Riker and is also happy to direct a show, offer advice, or do a guest spot on a podcast. He doesn't need the spotlight to enjoy his work. When you think of Jonathan Frakes, you probably picture him in uniform, confident and cool, standing on the bridge of the Enterprise. But have you ever wondered what his personal life was like? Away from the set, behind the lens, Frakes's. Real life is much more than any science fiction he directed or acted in. Life off camera. While Frakes built his career, love found him. He met the love of his life, Jeannie Francis, best known as Laura from General Hospital, back in the 80s, first on the set of the television soap opera Bare Essence, and again while working on the miniseries North and South. They had an instant connection and began dating in 1985. But like many other real-life romances, their relationship wasn't smooth. At one point, they broke up, but eventually found the spark that probably disappeared. They got married in 1988, and unlike most Hollywood marriages, Frakes and Jeannie Francis built something so strong and lasting. Through the highs of his directing career, the lulls in acting, and the industry's ups and downs, they stuck together. They settled into a quieter life while raising their two children, Jameson Ivor Frakes, born August 20, 1994, and Elizabeth Frances Frakes, born May 30, 1997. And for Frakes, that stability wasn't background noise, it was the real anchor in his life. Unlike their parents, Jameson and Elizabeth did not chase careers in acting in the traditional Hollywood sense. Jameson went for writing and directing, and Elizabeth kept her life private, staying out of the spotlight almost completely. Frakes and Francis have always respected that, letting their kids find their way in the world without the pressure to follow in their footsteps. But while he had an amazing family and a career that was soaring, he had no idea that his world was about to be turned upside down. In 1997, Frakes and his family faced something no parent or sibling should ever have to: the demise of his younger brother, Daniel, who succumbed to pancreatic cancer at the age of 41 after a long battle. The two brothers were close, and it hit Frakes hard. Daniel had been a strong presence in Jonathan's life. He was someone who quietly influenced Frakes' early love for storytelling. So losing him was a blow. And it happened when Frakes was professionally thriving as a director, making appearances and riding a wave of success. On set, he was thriving and getting things done. But off camera, he was grieving deeply. It was the kind of loss that changed you and made you see life differently. And for Frake, he had to find a way to deal with this pain. So he became an advocate for cancer research, especially through organizations like the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. He used his voice, his platform, and his presence for this purpose, helping others understand the importance of early detection and support for families going through it. He rarely speaks publicly about it, but when he does, it's with deep emotions and a quiet kind of strength. As someone who is known to be cool and confident, did you know Frakes faced his fair share of imposter syndrome? Yup, he had self-doubt, and in several interviews, he's been candid about the moments he felt he didn't belong, especially early on in his directing career. There were days when he wondered if he was good enough for the job and if he deserved to sit at the table. He also said he experienced anxiety during his career, especially when it came to acting. In an interview reported by Gizmodo, he described having a major anxiety attack before returning to act and directing Star Trek Picard. He had not acted in 18 years, and even after directing episodes before stepping back into Riker's shoes, he was unsure of his abilities. He said, "I had a major anxiety attack because, for whatever reason, I'd forgotten how to act. I forgot how to act. I wasn't a pretty picture for a few hours. I got my shit together today and ended up doing fine." He acknowledged the pressure of performing alongside actors like Patrick Stewart and Marina Sirtis, and emphasized that returning to acting wasn't as easy as picking up a bike. There's real vulnerability involved. Despite that, Frakes didn't let that fear stop him. Even when Thunderbird slowed down his career, he picked up smaller projects, voiceovers, and anything that kept the creative gears turning. Eventually, he got his career back on track. Today, Jonathan Frakes is still very much active in directing, occasionally acting, mentoring young creatives, and spending quality time with his wife, who he has been married to for over 35 years. So, what really happened to Jonathan Frakes? Well, he grew up and evolved. He loved and lost. He made some missteps, found a new purpose, and stayed true to himself through it all. What do you think about Jonathan Frakes' transition from an actor to a director? Do you have a favorite Riker moment or Frakes-directed episode? Drop in the comments. We would love to hear what made you a fan. Don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.